Привет, товарищи, it is I, Russian Moose, and welcome to a new series that I'm going to be doing about, I don't know, I'd say once a month so I can get some research compiled, but I'm thinking about naming it Talking History or Talking Vehicles or something along the lines of that. But I will be taking a look at my favorite vehicles or weapons or just events in history and kind of giving you guys more of a, well, more understanding about it. Most people who play War Thunder and games like that don't really understand the designs behind the vehicles that they drive or fly. So, I'm going to go ahead and do this. Yes, before you ask, Bahika's Ice, I know how to speak English, don't worry. Bahika Ice's, Side Chat podcast was the inspiration for this. He covers a lot of aircraft and stuff like that. I want to cover more ground vehicles, because I'm more of a ground pound guy, so that's what we're going to do. Today, we're talking about the Panzer Kampfwagen. Geez, I already screwed that up, didn't I? Anyway, let's do that again. The Panzer Kampfwagen Vier. That was also horrible. Alright, third time's a charm, right? The Panzer Kampfwagen Vier, which is, in case you did not know, the Panzer IV. So, I hope I said that right in German. Probably didn't, but who cares? But, yeah, it was a vehicle designed in the late 30s by the Krupp Company. They were in contest with the MAN and the Rheinmetall Borsig Company to design a tank that was supposed to support the Panzer IIIs in armor pushes. The Panzer IV was made to kill infantry, basically, and knock out soft targets, while the Panzer IIIs were going to focus more on the anti-tank role. And, well, yeah, I guess that kind of worked up until a point where they encountered the T-34s. They got a few modifications to the Panzer IV then, so we'll talk about those when that comes. But, so it was designed in the late 30s. Like I just said, not intended for enemy armor engagements, but about 8,553 Panzer IVs were built during World War II. That number can be skewed a little bit. I read some sources it was 8,550, some was 8,553. Basically, there were about 8,500 built, which is a lot of tanks, by the way. Not compared to the Shermans and T-34s. The Allies built many more tanks than the Germans, because the Germans were kind of, I guess I could go ahead and say this joke without getting in trouble. They were Nazis about their work. Get it? No, they were kind of Nazis about the work, as I just said. They scrutinized every little detail. They wanted precision over mass production. That's why they struggled a bit in the manufacturing processes. So, Krupp won this contract because their design was the best, I'm guessing. My sources didn't really tell why Krupp won that. They just did. But, so, the suspension on this vehicle was supposed to be a six-wheeled interleaved suspension, but as you can see here, that's not what it is. This has torsion bars. Well, Krupp had some troubles building the interleaved suspension for this vehicle, so the Wehrmacht was just like, go ahead, give it torsion bars, it's going to be easier for you. It's basically, yeah, right? No, I read that wrong. Okay. So, I read my notes wrong like an idiot, but the Wehrmacht wanted either six-wheeled interleaved suspension or torsion bars, but Krupp put simple leaf spring double bogey systems on because that was much easier for them to produce. And these wheels right here are rubber lined, so in case you're wondering. So it was easier for them to produce that. That was what the Germans wanted from their Panzer IV, and well, they didn't get it. I believe, from what I've played in game, I'm taking these models accurately, which I probably shouldn't, but from in-game, this torsion bar, this double bogey system on these tanks is really good. I have very stable firing on the move with these vehicles. So there's that. Germany also required a crew of 5 men, which this vehicle has, I believe. Yes, 5 men, as you can see there. Wow, those rounds are tiny. Alright, so this has 5 men, a machine gun radio operator, which here on the Alpha C does not have because he doesn't have a bow gun. But he would be operating a machine gun and the radio right there. You have the driver, the commander, a loader, and a gunner. Or, actually, I think they call them aimers now. Yeah, aimer. And he was kind of, dumbfounded there. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it very well on this model here, but when building this, Krupp actually offset the turret 66.5 millimeters to the left of the chassis centerline, and the engine was moved 152.4 millimeters to the right, which in US or imperial terms, that's 2.62 inches to the left for a turret and 6 inches to the right for the engine. This was key because it allowed the torque shaft for to clear the rotary base junction, which then the rotary base junction provided power for the electrical turret, which you can't really see it that well. I don't think they really modeled this offset that well. If we go up top, you can kind of see it, how there's a little bit less of a gap instead of over here. That was kind of key because that would allow the loader here to have more ammo stowage on his side instead of having to, lean over to the gunner or have the gunner put it in himself. So, and that was kind of crucial for them. Means you can carry more ammo, shoot more, always have fun with those, right? So, in 1936, the Wehrmacht accepted this vehicle into service as I'm going to butcher this name because Germany loves putting random names. Well, they're not random, they mean something, but just really long, complex names for the vehicles. This is the Versuchskraftfahrzeuge, I guess, 622, or VSKFZ 622. That was the official name for it. At the Friedkrupp Grusenwerk AG factory in Mandenburg. So that's where the first Panzer IVs were built, the Aufführungs A's, which is not in game, sadly. Neither are the Ausführung B's, or Boris, I think. I forget the one for A, but I think B is Boris or something like that. So, when it was accepted in the service in 36, it was powered by a Maybach HL 108TR engine, producing 183.87 kilowatts of power, and a SGR 75 transmission with 5 forward gears and 1 reverse gear, which allowed it to get up to 19.26 miles an hour, or 31 kilometers per hour. That's pretty fast for a vehicle of that time. In case you did not know, 1936, I believe the Russians here, the amazing Russians, were still thinking that this was a good idea. So, if that gives you anything to go off, there you go. Now, Germany actually wanted to have a 37mm low-velocity gun put into their... Wait, never mind, I read that wrong. That's what the Panzer IIIs had, which these tanks supported. These tanks first had the Kampfwagenkanonen 37L24, or the KWK 37L24, 75mm low-velocity gun to fire high explosive and, kill infantry soft targets, as I said, like trucks, light pillboxes, foxholes, basically houses. And against armored targets, they can fire the Panzergranate round, which was not very good for what it was designed to do. The Panzergranate is an armor-piercing round that that had a muzzle velocity of 430 meters a second, or 1,410 feet per second. That is really slow, by the way. That means it could penetrate up to 1.69 inches, or 43 millimeters, inclined at 30 degrees, and up to ranges of 700 meters, or 2,300 feet. That is pretty poo. Which is kind of understandable for a low-velocity 75mm gun. Which, in-game, it does wonders, by the way, because the stuff you're fighting in-game at 1.3 are reserve tanks and tanks that have less than, 30 millimeters of armor. I think the Aufführung C is one of the most heavily armored vehicles at 1.3. Goes to show German ingenuity, right? So in the Aufführung A, this is what we're talking about, by the way, the Aufführung A, not the C. The Aufführung A had 30 millimeters of armor all around, just like this vehicle does. They did not change the armor until the Ausführung D, I believe. Yes, the D. So, this machine was also armed with a 7.92mm MG34 mounted coaxially in the turret, and the Ausführung A had the same machine gun mount on a ball mount in the hull for the machine gunner slash radio operator to use. Ooh, never mind, I lied. The Ausführung A was protected by 14.5mm of steel armor and 20mm on the turret. So, it was basically made to stop small arms fire and light artillery barrages. And maybe if you're lucky, like an AT rifle. So 35 were built of the Ausführung A, and in 1937 the Ausführung B was put into service. Well, put into manufacturing, I should say. They improved it by replacing the engine with a more powerful engine, the Maybach HL120TR, and a new transmission, SSG75, with 6 forward gears and 1 reverse gear. Even though it weighed 16 tons, which is more than the Ausführung A, it increased its max speed from, what was it? I cannot find that. 19.26 miles an hour to 24 miles an hour. So instead of going 31 kilometers per hour, it will go 39 kilometers an hour. It's a pretty big increase if you think about this time period in 1937. So the Ausführung B is where it gets more armor. The maximum hull plate was increased to a thickness of 30 millimeters. Yet again, not going to stop much in the way of AP shells, but now you can protect against most AT rifles, I believe, from the front, if you know what to do. So 42 Panzer via Ausführung Bs were made, and then the Ausführung C, which you see right here in game, is put into service in 1938, well, in production. So 40 Cs were made. That's a chassis number, we don't care about that. The engine was replaced from its Maybach engine to a HL120TRM, which there are no stats for that engine on here, but I'm pretty sure it made it faster, as most engine upgrades would do. So the last of the 140 Ausführung Cs were produced in August 1939, and production was changed to the Ausführung D. 248 Ausführung Ds were made. They got rid of the whole machine gun in the Ausführung C. They figured out that was a bad idea, so they put it back in the D. And they changed the gun mantlet from, here you see the gun mail is inside of the turret, to, where is it? It should be on the Fs. Where are you? Well, to an exterior, oh yeah, there it is. Wow, I'm dumb. To an exterior one. Here you can see it's inside the gun. Here it is outside of the gun. So the mantle was moved to the outside, increasing armor protection, kind of giving it a little bit of spaced armor if you look here. So I'm just going to take this camo off so you can see the tank a little more. So the D had more armor on it. Went up to, side armor was increased to 20 millimeters, which is pretty good, if you ask me. It's pretty good. I believe the LC had like 10 or something. Yeah, 15. So they added 5 millimeters to the sides, and they put this applique armor on the front, if you can see here. Applique armor is this armor that they add on after they put everything else in place. In case you're wondering what applique means, that's what it is. So the Ausführung D was put in service in September 1939. Well, that's when it saw combat in Poland. So this is really the first time Panzer IVs saw service, which was the Ausführung D model. Yes. So Germany had 80 tanks that they wanted of the Ausführung Ds, but they wanted to change them. They changed the gun from the low velocity 75, as seen here, to a 50mm gun, which was based on the Pak 38 AT gun. They looked at it, said this was a horrible idea, and, well, they took it away. So in October 1940, the Alps E was introduced. As you can see here, The LC in-game has an applique armor on the front, giving a total of 50 millimeters for the bow plate. And as you can see here, it's kind of spaced. I don't think it really matters. It's not that big of a space, but yeah, it's enough, you know. So, the Ausführung E. Just reading my notes here for a second. So, according to this, the side armor was also increased to 30 millimeters, which it was not modeled in game. The weight of the vehicle was now 24.6 short tons, and the track width, since the earlier tracks were smaller, they were having troubles getting through mud and stuff. Because you don't know how tracks work, the wider your track is, the more weight dispersion you have, so you can go over softer ground easier, but your max speed is not that good because you have more friction from your tracks, your engine's having to push more, in theory. So, they were increased from 380 millimeters in width to 400 millimeters. That basically helps it a little more. So these newer tracks also allowed the fitting of a ice sprag, which is put on the rear idler wheel, and the front sprockets were modified. So here's the rear idler. No, is that the drive wheel? No, drive wheels are always in front. So here on the rear idler, you could put a ice thing on it that will, I think it extends past the track. And what it does is, from what I've read, it just cleans up the track from ice that gets caught in them. It's kind of ingenious for, oh, sorry about that. I had a little sound in my throat. Kind of makes it easier for you to go across rough terrain in the ice and snow. So after that, the Alps A, well, not the Alps A, the Alps F was being introduced, which in game we have the F1, which is a later naming for it. So, 471 Alps F1s were made. They were just kind of better versions of the Ausführung E. As you can see here, instead of having the stupid applique look on them, they kind of streamlined it more, and the side armor was increased in game to the 30 millimeters I had. But as you can see here, the armor of the hull was changed. This whole front plate is now flat, and it still has the same poopy 75 millimeter gun. And, well, it's just an armor upgrade, really. That's why I've read about the F1. Now, the F2, that's where we start getting into the fun stuff. So the F2 here, in case you're wondering, my skin is from the show. So during Operation Barbarossa, Hitler was like, hey, our tanks suck against anti-tank warfare. The Panzer IVs is getting destroyed. So he called his staff in and said, hey, we need a better gun for the Panzer IVs. We need a long 75. Well, actually, it's not what he said, but, you know, whatever. So Krupp was actually told by the German High Command to put a 50mm Pak 38 L60 gun into the turret. One prototype was made on the 15th of November 1941. It was put into service against the T-34s and the KV-1s, and, well, it got pooped on, by the way. So, they upped the gun from the 50mm gun, and Krupp actually contracted in joint development modified with Rheinmetall Borsig. In case you did not know, that's one of the people who lost the contract to Krupp for the Panzer in the first place. So, Rheinmetall, in case you don't know, very good weapons manufacturer of the time. And they were developing a 75mm anti-tank gun to put on tanks. And Krupp was like, hey, can we use that gun? So they said yes. So Rheinmetall's weird name for it was replaced later on in the production of the F2 by the Pak 40 L46, and then once it was put inside the tank, and the recoil mechanisms and stuff were shortened, it was given the name KWK 40 L43. And this new gun was a godsend to these German tankers who were facing the T-34s and the KV-1s and getting pooped on. So this round, I mean, this tank fired the Panzer 39 round, and at 430 meters a second, 1,410 meters a second, is what it used to have with the shortened barrel. But now it can have 750 meters a second, or 2,460 feet per second. That's a pretty fast round for its time. Remember, this is, what, 1941? Yeah, this is during Operation Barbarossa. The invasion of the Soviet Union. Don't know why people always decide to invade the Soviet Union. It's horrible. So the original guns were equipped with a single chamber, obviously. You can only shoot once and you have to reload. And this ball-shaped muzzle brake that reduced recoil by a lot. The recoil springs and pistons on the inside were having a horrible time trying to keep up with this gun. This tank would recoil so much after you shot it without this muzzle brake. But this muzzle brake cut the recoil down by about 50%, which is really, really good. And this new round, the Panzer Gunner 39, fired by this new gun, the KWK-40L43, could penetrate 77 millimeters of armor, or 3.03 inches. Doesn't sound like a lot until you tell you how far away. At a range of almost 2 kilometers. That was way outside of this vehicle's operating range. That's 6,000 feet. Well, it was tested out to 1,830, which is 6,000 feet. That's almost 2 kilometers. That is a very, very long shot. The Fs that received the new longer guns were temporarily named F2. Then they're given the designation SDKFZ 161-1 and increased, well, this new modification increased the weight to 23.6 tons or 26 short tons. 3 months after regaining protection, the F2 was renamed to the Aufführung G. So, the Aufführung G. Here we are in game. It has stupid freaking Africa Corps camo on it. And so, the production for the Alf Gs ran from March 42 to June of 43. It's a pretty long run, if you ask me. The Aufführung Gs were always upgraded throughout this production run. They were given 20 more millimeters of armor, as seen here, in applique, which you can kind of see it in game here. So if you look right here on the side, right there is the normal plate. You can see it's welded on. And then this piece right here was added on. And if you look closely, I think you can see straps that they used to put on right down through there. So that was added to the front. And the side armor was kept at the same thickness as 30 millimeters. I think they figured out that basically if you get shot in the side, you're done for anyways. Why try to weigh down the vehicle with more armor there? It's not going to do anything. So now with 80 millimeter frontal armor and still 30 on the back, in the sides, or 20 on the rear of the hull, 30 all around on the turret. The turret still had 50 millimeters of armor on the front. Pretty poo, but I don't think they wanted to weigh down the turret. The electrical systems that they used to drive the turret were kind of bad at moving around heavy armor, so they didn't want to do anything with that. Oh yes, this applique armor was not tied down by straps. It's actually bolted on, which I don't see any of the bolts anywhere. I don't know. It's magic. It's German ingenuity. That's finest right there. So, on January the 5th of 1943, Hitler decided that all Panzer should have 80 millimeters of frontal armor. So all the vehicles that were in service at that time, be it Alfs E, Alfs F2, Alfs F1, they were given 80 millimeters of frontal armor. Pretty good. Bet you those crews that had the poopy little, like, 50 millimeters on the front really loved getting 80. I know I would. So, when making the Aufführung G, they simplified production. Vision ports on the side of the turrets were kind of removed. I think there's one right there still. No, that's just where one used to be, actually. So vision ports on the sides were removed to simplify production, so they didn't have to put in vision ports on the sides, which are kind of pointless anyways, if you ask me. It's funny. The Germans are very, very funny. So what they did was they got rid of vision ports on the sides, right? But then they put this road wheel rack on. Which doesn't look like that's hard to make anyway, so maybe it does help in the long run. But they put that on anyways on the left side of the vehicle. And they also put brackets for 7 spare track links on the frontal glacis plate, as seen right here. Which, oh, and right here. That's pretty cool, I guess. More tracks better, you know, in case you break down the middle of the desert and have to fix your tank. And so, since this vehicle saw some combat in Northern Africa, they increased the engine's ventilation and created slits over the engine deck, as seen here. I don't believe the earlier models had these as big. Yeah, you can see right here, the slits don't go as far back on this one. So, on the Ausführung G, it goes back to right about here. Here it says do that. See? So they gave it more ventilation, making it easier to cool off in the high temperatures of Africa and just hot temperatures in general, really. And cold weather was introduced. Well, cold weather performance was boosted by adding a heating device to the engine's coolant, and it now had fluid injected starting, which is very good. Because in case you don't know, whenever it gets cold, liquids freeze, and if your liquids freeze in your vehicle, it doesn't have liquid injection. Well, it doesn't start. That would suck in the middle of the winter when you were in combat. A funny thing, they got rid of the original headlights and put on these new ones with slits. And I don't know if it's in game. They say here on Wikipedia the turrets had one. No, it doesn't look like it. Apparently the turret's supposed to have a headlight on the earlier models. They got rid of that in the Ausführung G, yet again to simplify production. So here we move on to my favorite Panzer IV, the Ausführung H, which I'm going to have to go pull out of here real quick. So late G models were equipped with Schürzen, which, in case you don't know what Schürzen are, that's what these are right here. The skid plates, or the skirt plates. That just makes the tank look so mean. Look at it. Oh, I know mine's like poo brown, but who cares? Tell me if you know what show that's from, by the way. Like, you know, have fun. Well, I'll tell you about it. Late models of the Ausführung G were also replaced with a newer gun, a longer gun, might I add. It did not have the KWK 40L43 anymore. It had the KWK L48, which, if what I remember is correct, the Germans used shell lengths to determine lengths of the gun. So this barrel should be 48 75mm rounds long. And as I had a multiple baffled muzzle brake on it instead of that poopy other one. Well, it wasn't a poopy other one. This one was just better at its job. As you can see there, now has multi-baffles on it. None on the top or the side, which is fun. I don't know why they didn't do that. I mean, the gun sight's right there, so if you fired, all the smoke and stuff would fly out and you couldn't see. It's pretty dumb. So, the production of the Ausführung H, which the later Gs were renamed because of the Schürzen, began in June 1943 under designation SDKFC 161/2. Stuck with the 80mm frontal armor, which was now integrated instead of applique. And they also put Zimmermiet paste on it, which, if you don't know what that is, it's anti-magnetic tank mine paste that they put on the side. Shoot. Let me pull up the Tiger E, because it has it on it. I don't think it does with the skin that I have, but it does with the skin. But let me take that off real quick. Show you guys this Zimmermiet paste. There it is right there. It's with the weird, like, honeycomb look on it. Well, it's not really honeycomb. It's like honey bunches of oats. No, what are those things called? You guys know what I'm talking about. Like the cereal that, like, has that kind of look to it. So that was added to the Ausführung H, because I'm guessing they were having troubles with magnetic mines on their tanks. I believe the magnetic mines were thrown at the tanks, which is pretty funny. So the side skirts on the side of the hull were 5 millimeters thick, and the side skirts on the turrets were 8 millimeters thick. It doesn't sound like a lot, but if a heat round goes through that, it will probably hit that skirt and detonate, and then all that molten metal will just hit the side of the tank and not do anything. So, also with the Ausführung H, these wheels were replaced from rubber coated to just cast steel. At this time, Germany was kind of having rubber issues. They, you know, had fun with those. Okay, so another thing I just read is that on the top of the turret, there are no longer these holes for... Well, it looks like they're still there. But apparently from what I'm reading here, and a hole in the roof designed for the Navetsdiskungswaffe was replaced by a circular armor plate due to the shortages of the weapons. If I remember that name correctly, this weird sounding German gun was actually an STG-44 with a curved barrel. Germans at their finest, right? So I'm trying to see this hole on the top. Ah, there it is. Where's that viewport? I cannot tell. Didn't tell me right there. It's either that or that one. Those were replaced because the storages of the weapons. The Germans were stupid more than they thought of that thing. They just took a Sturmgewehr 44 and they bent the barrel, and, well, the rounds followed that barrel. It was made so that tankers could stick it out and kill infantry that's climbing on their tank. It's pretty dumb if you ask me. So, with these new modifications added to this tank, it now weighed 25 tons or 27.56 short tons. And it was given the SSG 77 6-speed transmission brought over from the Panzer IIIs. And, well, that didn't really do much for it. I believe it actually made it worse. If you were not on good ground with the Office H, you were going about 10 miles an hour or 16 kilometers an hour, which is kind of bad. So an experimental Ausführung H used a hydrostatic transmission, which is I think it's a water run transmission. It's really weird, how they work. But if you play World of Tanks, you might see one of these around, but instead of it being flat here on the back, it had a little bit of a hump to hold the water and the new transmission in it. One of those was made, never put into service because it was pretty crap. So here we move on to the final version of the Panzer IV, which is the Ausführung J. And I have not unlocked it in-game because, quote-unquote, to the Germans it was a retrograde, but as a matter of fact, it was pretty poop. So, to replace the heavy losses that the Office H took on, because the Office H was not the best, the Ausführung J had no electric generator for the turret traverse, so the turret had to be manually traversed, which is pretty poo for the gunner. But later on they replaced that electric generator with a 200-liter or 53 US gallon fuel tank, which increased the road range by 320 kilometers or 200 miles, which is what it was increased to. It's pretty good. So, vision ports were taken out of the turret altogether. Pistol ports, which was weird. Pistol ports, in case you don't know, is you open it, you stick the barrel of your pistol out of it, and you can shoot. Really dumb. So all that stuff was removed. And the engine's radar housing was changed to be more sloped, which you can see right here. Actually, if you open up the X-ray, yeah, there they are. So if you open up the X-ray there, and you can see the radiators, these were new and sloping. And the back of the hull is now a little bit slanted, just for those new radiator housings. A centrifugal muffler was added, was replaced by a two-flame suppressing muffler. By late 44, Zimmermeat was no longer being applied to German armored vehicles because they just needed to pump these things out as fast as they could to have any chances of winning. And, well, later on in the war, I can show you this. It is a premium. The Panzer 4 is actually a late model GA. And as you can see here, it has a wire mesh side skirts, which I think look really cool. Those were put up, and they were just there for fun. The number of return rollers on the transmission was reduced from 4 to 3 to further, to speed up production. I don't know exactly what return rollers do. I believe they're the ones on the top here. Here, let's go back to the G so I can show you these. Yes, these return rollers. Those were basically just used to guide the track along to the front road wheel, and then it can turn. That was reduced from 4 to 3. I think this one right here was actually taken out, so that production will be sped up, because as I said earlier, Germany was just trying to pump these things out as fast as they could. It's basically late war Germany in a nutshell. They just tried to get crap out so they could have a chance of winning, and it really didn't work out for them. So let's go into a bit of combat history for these. So when Germany invaded Poland on the 1st of September 1939, the Armored Corps was composed of 1,445 Panzer I's, or Eins, 1,222 Panzer Drei's, or Twos, 98 Panzer Zwei's, or Threes, I think I'm saying that right, and 211 Panzer Vier's, or Panzer Fours. So the more modern vehicles amounted to less than 10% of Germany's actually armored strength, which were the 3s and 4s. The 1s and 2s were kind of poop. Well, they weren't really poo in 1939, but they were getting really outdated really fast. So the 1st Panzer Division had about equal amounts of every tank. They had 17 Panzer 1s, 18 Panzer 2s, 28 Panzer 3s, and 14 Panzer 4s per battalion. That's pretty good, I'd say. That is a really nice balance. And the rest of the divisions were really, really bad off. Vehicle-wise, they had they had really low numbers of the modern vehicles, which are the Panzer 3s and 4s. Most of them had about 34 Panzer 1s, 33 Panzer 2s, 5 Panzer 3s, and 6 Panzer 4s per battalion. And, well, the Polish army possessed less than 200 tanks, capable of penetrating the German lights, which is pretty bad if you ask me. The Polish had a lot of AT guns, though, and, well, they kind of wrecked house with those. So they lost a lot of tanks to, well, a lot of Panzer 1s and 2s to them. The Panzer 4 showed its role very well in that, as taking out light targets. The low-velocity howitzer ad firing AT at those AT guns did quite a bit of work to them. That was one of the reasons why Blitzkrieg worked so well in Poland. So we move on to France on the 10th of May 1940. Heinz Guderian, the man who actually wanted the Panzer IV in the first place, I forgot to mention that, invaded France with 523 Panzer I's, 955 Panzer II's, 349 Panzer III's, and 278 Panzer IV's. 106 Panzer 35T's and 228 Panzer 38T's, which were Czech tanks. And, well, Germans wrecked house yet again. The French and English armor was really bad at that time. The Panzer IVs, armed with their low-velocity AT gun, were able to take out the French tanks, such as the Samoa S-35 and the Shah B-1. The Samoa S-35 had maximum armor of 55, which was pretty bad. But the German low-velocity howitzers on these early Panzer IVs could not penetrate it, because they only had 43 millimeters of penetration at 700 meters. And, Well, they really had to run for the money when they encountered the Matilda II, which had 70 millimeters of frontal armor on the everywhere, basically. Except for the sides and the rear, which had 65. Not really that big of a drop. And in Africa, even though the Panzer IVs were deployed in Africa by the Africa Corps, until the long gun variant began production, tank outperformed by Panzer IIIs. The Panzer IIIs at this time had long-barreled 50 millimeter guns, and, well, they were just better in general, I would say, for the African theater, which the African theater is shooting at longer ranges, moving up, shooting, moving up, shooting. Panzer IIIs were smaller, faster, had a higher velocity gun. That just makes them better in general for that theater. So, the English deployed the Matilda II there too, as well, I should say. And everybody had trouble penetrating that, the 3s and the 4s. Panzer 3s and 4s. But it's funny, because the English 40mm 2-pounder, 2-pounder gun could knock out both German tanks with really no trouble at all. But by August 1942, Rommel received 27 4-offs 2s with their L-43 guns, the long-barrel 75s. The longer gun could penetrate every single tank that saw in that theater up to 1.5 kilometers, 1,500 meters. That's pretty far out. Those American and English guns could do absolutely nothing at that range to this vehicle. Well, I mean, just to say, though, the most heavily armored vehicle that the U.S. had was the M3 Lee, which is not very good. More tanks, more F2s showed up between August and October of 42. It wasn't that much, though. England had more forces shipped in, and at that time, the Shermans were first starting to appear, so that wasn't very good for the Panzerfahr. The Panzerfahr also took place in the invasion of Yugoslavia and Greece in early 41. Those would be early model Panzerfahrs, which, you know, low velocity 75s against, I don't even think the Greeks had any tanks, and if they did, they were really poopy tanks. So let's move on to the Eastern Front. Operation Barbarossa, and on the 22nd of June 1941, the Germans went through, and until they encountered enemy tanks, were saying, oh, our Panzer IVs with our low-velocity 75s are perfect for this theater, because the Soviets like to use AT guns and AT rifles, and the little howitzer that the early Panzer IVs had was very good at taking out those, until the KV-1 and T-34 showed up. Then the Germans were like, well, shit, we need a higher velocity gun. So that is why the long-barreled KWK L-43 were put onto the tanks, onto the Panzer IVs, so they could go through T-34s at basically any angle, from 1 kilometer to 1,600 meters, and that is really good. The F-2s first started appearing in 1942 on that theater in the summer offensive. There were around 135 F-2s available, and those were the only vehicles that the Germans had that could kill the T-34 and KV-1 successfully at that time. And only 135 were fielded, as I said. That's not very good. So between June 42 and March 43, the Ford was the mainstay German tank. Panzer IIIs are starting to get phased out because they're becoming kind of useless in that theater with the really long range engagements and things of that sort. And late September 1942, the Tiger I was not yet in numerous supplies, so the Panzer IV kind of had to pick up slack, and the Panther had not been delivered yet. Panther first saw combat at the Battle of Kursk, which it was kind of, well, it was really good at the Battle of Kursk. It's just they couldn't take out all the Soviet T-34s and stuff rushing them. So 502 Panzer IVs were destroyed on the Eastern Front in 1942 alone. That is, let's go ahead and say every crew member died. So that's 500 times 5. That would be 2,500 men lost their lives. That's a lot of men. So, in 43, the Panzer IV fought in the Battle of Kursk. Panthers showed up. And the early Panthers were kind of really, really bad. They had a lot of reliability issues, and like, say the engine broke down or, just randomly caught on fire, the guns would malfunction, things of that sort. So, 841 Panzer IVs were in that battle, and they basically had to do their job and make up some for the Panthers that were kind of bad. And throughout 1943, German army lost 2,352 Panzer IVs on the Eastern Front. And some divisions, by the end of that theater, were reduced to 12 to 18 tanks. That is entire division of tanks reduced to about a handful. That is not a lot. So in 1944, 2,643 more Panzer IVs were destroyed by the Soviets. And yet again, since Panthers were still being pretty poo, the Panzer IV had to pick up its slack and the Panther's slack. Though the 2nd SS Panzer Corps through 1944 had Panther tanks being delivered to them, they were pretty good. SS tankers were really, really good. So on to the Western Front, 44 and 45. The Panzerfahrers G, the 1st SS Panzer Division, or let me try to say this, Leibstandarte Adolf Hitler, near the Arc de Triomphe in Paris, 1944. I don't know why that's in here. What did it do? It doesn't tell me. But Panzer IVs composed around half of the German tank force on the Western Front prior to the Allied invasion of Normandy on June 6, 1944. Most of the 11 Panzer divisions that saw action in Normandy initially contained an armor regiment of 1 battalion of Panzer IVs and another of Panthers, for a total of around 160 tanks. Now that is a lot of tanks. I'm sure the numbers were about 120 Panzer IVs, 40 Panthers, because Panthers were hard to produce. And the Waffen SS were on the Normandy front, and, well, they had a lot more Panthers than anybody else, so it's good for them. The Panzer IV was kind of, it was with them, but it wasn't their mainstay tank. So, since the Panzer IV, after the invasion of Normandy, was always being upgraded, it still remained very, very capable of destroying Allied vehicles. With these new guns, more armor, stuff of that sort. And one thing I'm going to go ahead and say about the U.S. tanks is that tanks like the Sherman, I don't know if I have one in my lineup right now, no. Tanks like the Sherman are very tall. So, when they were pushing up through the French countryside in Normandy, they would be seen over the hedges. German tankers would often see about this much of the vehicle from behind the hedgerow. And so what they would do is they'd line up their gun through the hedge and shoot. And since it's the side of the tank, it will go straight through, most often destroying those tanks. And, well, that's because we had to be stupid and put a radial engine in all of our tanks. As it says here, Allies took a lot of casualties from these Panzer IVs and AT guns and stuff like that. So, the English had their Piet gun, which is very scary. I don't know what Piet stands for, but it's basically a lobbed mortar shell that comes out of a spring-fired AT gun. It's really scary. And, well, another thing that the German Panzer IV crews hated about this theater was that the Schürzen on the side was not very well secured on. As you can see here, this lattice work on the side is basically one bar and is bolted onto the side. And, well, they would always lose Schürzen to shrubbery, of all things. So, They really hated that. Most of the time they actually took it off, or just didn't care if they lost a piece. So, that's really it for that theater. Later on during the war, the English brought up their Sherman Fireflies with the 17-pounder guns, go straight through Panzer IV, did not give a shit about that Panzer IV's armor. Even though they had to go up against the Firefly and later 76mm Shermans, the Panzer IV still put up a fight. They tried as much as they could. They really did. Let's go and get that one out of the way. Captured Panzer IVs. So let's move on to the interesting stuff, the variants of this tank. So, the Panzer IV was used in many things. The Jagdpanzer IV, which I could pull up here. I don't have it unlocked yet. I actually kind of want to get it. But the Jagdpanzer IV here had a 75mm L48 gun, the same one that's on the Ausführung G Panzer IVs. This was made for AT role, of course. And Krupp also developed the Sturmgeschützwagen 4, which we don't have one in game. Very sad, but actually, I believe this is one. This is a prototype one. No, I don't want to take it out of Chester. I want to customize. I believe this is a prototype one. But this is what they were thinking was a good idea. Not really good. The Wehrmacht opted with the 4 and the 470, which is right here. The 70 just had a different gun. I think it's a Panther gun on that. They were also used, as seen earlier when I showed you the mesh skirts on the side, the Panzer's Baffelswagen command tank, it just had more radios in it, really. That's really it. It's more radios. It was used to communicate through the tank regiments. As you can see here, there's a lot of antennas. And I believe that's a periscope right there, if I'm not mistaken. So those were put in. They had new equipment, stuff like that. They couldn't carry as much ammo because they weren't supposed to fight. They couldn't carry only 72 rounds. The other Panzer IVs could carry 87. Not that big of a difference, but hey. Another Panzer IV variant was the Panzerbeobachtungswagen 4. Oh my god, I said that right on the first try. I'm a genius. It was an artillery observation aircraft. Look at this beautiful aircraft, guys. Vehicle built on the Panzer IV chassis. 2 received new radio equipment, electrical generator. That's really it. They would work with the Vesp and the Hummels to coordinate attacks on Allied positions. So another variant was the Sturmpanzer IV Brummbau, which is scary. It had a 150mm infantry support self-propelled gun. That is a very big gun. 4 were used in the Battle of Kursk. Don't know how that went for them, but 2 Sturmpanzer IVs are still alive and kicking. Actually, I don't know if they're kicking, but they're still around. They also made a 105mm version called the Heuschreck, or the Grasshopper. And another thing that we're going to be getting soon, in 1.57 for War Thunder, is called the Dicker Max. It is a Panzer IV chassis that had the turret moved. Actually, really, the hull was really changed. You can see right here, this area was kind of cut and made into 2 little boxes for each crew member. That was moved. The back of it was open, and it had a 105mm high-velocity gun inside of it. This vehicle was made to take out bunkers and things of that sort, static positions. We're going to get it in-game as a tank destroyer with a 105mm gun. I believe it's going to be a premium, so you don't really have to worry about them that much. So, another variant, well, a few more variants of the Panzer, the AAA units, which are the Wirbelwind and the Ostwind, and one that we don't have in game, which is the Mobilwagen, which is kind of weird. If you look it up, it's basically a Panzer IV with a box on top of it, an open box, and just has 4 guns on the inside. It's really weird looking. Well, they had the Mobilwagens with the 420s, or they have the one with the 137 on top. There's that. The Wirbelwind is a very scary vehicle. It had the Flak Vierling gun on the inside, which is 4 20mm guns basically duct taped together. If you look at it, that's a very scary machine. In game, it is very scary. These Panzer Gunner 40s, which are HVAP, can go up to 64mm of penetration. Fired out of 4 guns that fire really fast. It's scary. The Ostwind was also made, and the Kugelblitz. The Kugelblitz is one of my favorite vehicles. I don't have it in game, it just looks so cool. It had twin 30mm anti-aircraft guns on it, which are also very scary in game. I believe they can get HVAP. Yes, they can. With 95mm of penetration. That's very weird. Another thing that was based off the Panzer was the Hummel artillery piece, which 666 of those were made. And the tank destroyer that we're getting in 1.57, the Nashorn, or the Nashorn, or the Nashorn, I call it the Nashorn, tank destroyer had an 88mm gun based on the Panzer IV chassis, case made, open top, just like the Hummel. A very rare variant of the Panzer was the Berge Panzer, and it was an armored recovery vehicle. Look up one of these, they look really cool. They have cranes on them and winches and stuff like that. Basically, if you get your tank stuck in a ditch, that's what you call it. It's the tank tow truck. So that's really it for the Panzer. One of my favorite vehicles in game, as I said. I don't play them that much because I have much higher tier vehicles. Let me actually set my lineup back up while I talk. I have much higher tier vehicles to worry about, like the Panthers and stuff of that sort. What else did I have? Actually, I think I had the F in my lineup. I had the H. No, I had the Jagdpanzer 38T. Oh, yeah. I also had this right there. And right here, I had the Duck. Duck. I should do one of these on the Duck one day. But that was the Panzer, one of my favorite vehicles. We'll look at this variant. Why not? Tell me if you like me to do any more of these. Tell me what you guys, if you would like to see more of these, what vehicles or weapons you'd like me to talk about. I will try to spread knowledge with you guys. Other than that, I'd like to thank you all very much for watching. Stay safe out there. Don't get shot in the face, and I'll check you next time.